What's up guys, I'm Ethan, your Spinnaker expert. Thanks for joining us for another installment of our Spinnaker training series where we take you through Spinnaker and teach you how to get the most out of it. Today we're going to be talking about how to use the different stages within Spinnaker to model the deployment workflows that you need rather than feeling constrained. So what we're going to do is use a whole bunch of different stages to show you how you can build a pipeline very easily that goes from build all the way to production with some various checks thrown in there. Let's get started. So the first thing you might see in a typical deployment pipeline is a bake stage. A bake stage is going to take some artifact produced in your CI environment, bake that into an AMI. So let's start with that. We'll select a bake stage from our dropdown. Now, the next thing you might typically do is take that AMI and deploy it into a test environment. So we'll use the add stage button again and select the deploy stage. Here we'll rename the deploy stage to deploy test so that we know which environment we're intending this stage for. Now, something I've typically seen is the need to have some type of approval that says this next step of my pipeline can proceed. I can go from test to staging. Spinnaker provides us a really great way to do that using the manual judgment stage. So we'll add one of those here. So the manual judgment stage gives us a lot of options. We can prompt a user for some input, for example. So we'll do that by saying, "Are you ready?" in this instructions box. And then we'll give the user two options. We'll say yes, and then we'll say no. We'll use these options later in our pipeline to determine where we're gonna, like what branch we might take. We'll do that now by adding a check precondition stage. We'll select add stage again, checking a precondition. So this gets into a part of Spinnaker that we haven't covered yet, and that's expressions. You can check out the documentation at Armory's website about expressions at docs.armory.io. So what expressions give us is the ability to dynamically check some value within our pipeline, and then we can make judgments on that. So what we'll do here is we'll add a new precondition, and we'll say we want to use an expression, and we'll check the manual judgment stage that we just added. If you look at the documentation, you'll find there's a bunch of helpers here, and we're going to use one of those helpers called the judgment helper. So we'll say judgment, the name of our stage equals yes. Now, if this stage passes, then if the user put in yes for the manual judgment, then we'll proceed on further down our pipeline. If it didn't, then we'll just stop the pipeline, not failing the pipeline specifically, but halting it. So the next thing we'll do here is we'll model some type of promotion, which will allow us to deploy to a different environment. So we'll use another deploy stage and call that deploy staging. Now, when your build or your deployment finally hits a staging environment, you may want to use Jenkins to run some type of acceptance testing. We can do that by jumping back into check preconditions, adding a parallel stage by just clicking add stage while we're sitting on that stage, and we'll select a Jenkins job. You can see here that now we're running two stages in parallel. Once both of those have successfully completed, we'll add one more stage that will let us deploy to production. And here we'll add another dependency for our upstream stages that says the two previous stages that this stage depends on have to successfully complete before we can do this. So we'll add the deploy staging stage here as a dependency. And we can see that we've then said deploy production depends on these two. I hope that this video was helpful for you in understanding how you can use all of the different stages of Spinnaker to model your deployment workflow. Spinnaker gives us all of these really robust things that have been battle tested at some of the biggest names in our industry. You can use all of these stages to do very simple deployments, very complex deployments. And you can see that in this example here where we've branched out and reached out into other systems specifically to do work that Spinnaker doesn't expose to us natively.